Are you looking for a real estate investing strategy effective for the next 6 to 12 months? If there's an investing formula superior to wholesaling or rehabbing and better than landlording, well, there is. One of our sponsors has been an investor for over 20 years. He's been through it all, up and down markets. This is not new to him. But listen to this. He's offering an investing how-to kit for free to our listeners for a limited time. So go to unlimitedfundingkit.com and get your free kit to start investing without a credit check or large down payment. This information is not common knowledge. It reveals how to have virtually unlimited funding for your deals based on a technique very, very few investors know about. Guys, this is not common knowledge. So be one of the few and get the Unlimited Funding Kit by going to their website at unlimitedfundingkit.com. Again, the kit is free, just a few bucks for shipping. So head over and get your kit, unlimitedfundingkit.com.
Welcome to Underground Wealth Secrets, hosted by Julie Houston on behalf of Bob and Ed Diamond. This is your friendly guide on leveling up your business, achieving financial freedom, and changing people's lives. This is for serious players who want to surpass their current stage and move the needle further. Tune in to get practical advice and eye-opening stories of industry leaders across the nation, teaching you how to scale your business with a strong financial mindset and true to your core values. Let's get this discussion started with your one and only host, Julie Houston.
This is your host, Julie Houston, and moderator for Underground Wealth Secrets podcast on behalf of Bob and Ed Diamond. I am very excited today. I'm going to be speaking with Yakov Smart, who is joining us today and sharing behind the scenes what's working in his business, what's not working, and what they are having a lot of success with. Yakov, welcome to Underground Wealth Secrets. I'm so excited to have you here today. What an honor.
Hey, so glad to be here, Julie. Thank you for having me.
So can you start off and tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of, what you did and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I could tell my whole life story, but we'd be here for a while. So I'll give people the Cliff Notes version, right? Like a 60-second version. So been in the online space for a while, started around 2014, 2015. Started off, wrote the book on LinkedIn marketing and lead generation called Disrupting LinkedIn. And I used to do a lot of seminars, speaking, teaching business owners how to use LinkedIn to make money, basically, to go and find leads, build their personal brands, grow their influence online. And then in 2020, started working with real estate investors, showing them how to use LinkedIn and other social media channels for raising private money, right? For finding passive investors and scaling their capital raising. And I own a business called Investor Attraction Academy, where we work with real estate entrepreneurs who want to scale their capital raising so they can buy bigger assets and grow their net worths faster.
Nice. Okay. So I got to ask, did the LinkedIn business that you did it kind of lead into raising private capital?
Totally. Yeah. So initially out of the gate, people were looking for, high-end clients. And then people started coming to me looking for high net worth investors who could be investors in their deals, accredited investors. And so there was a kind of a natural progression, right? And it's since evolved, of course, where we give people strategic plans for using not just LinkedIn, but other social media channels, other online strategies for driving people in the door and building relationships with high net worth individuals at scale, one to many. I'm probably like you, I'm big on one to many marketing, right? And being able to do that through some of these channels.
You're blowing my mind away. So you're basically saying through the social media outlet channels, you're able to use some type of method to build a rapport with someone that eventually turns into a relationship where you're raising private capital for your real estate deals?
Correct.
Okay, so I got to ask, why are people not more using social media to raise private capital? Because this is honestly, and I'm just going to be honest here, I've raised private capital before, and I've never thought of even utilizing social media. So tell me how that works. Like, why should investors be thinking or questioning themselves if they want to raise capital money, what they should be utilizing on social media?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one reason is people don't know what they don't know, right? Not everyone wants to spend a ton of time on social media. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to. And sometimes investors, if they need to raise, let's say 250,000 for a deal, they may have a network already and be able to raise that money very quickly versus a lot of people we work with, they want to raise millions and they want to have a pipeline of potential millions to pull from to take down those bigger deals. So I think those are a few of the reasons. I think another reason is, of course, SEC compliance. No one wants to be the person who breaks the law and gets in trouble, right? So we have to be compliant and actually build relationships. And the other piece is like people just don't really know how, right? People don't understand you can systematize social media. I talked about this on my podcast, actually, where I like to be at the cause of social media, not the effect of social media. What does that mean? Well, that means that, there's people who literally will wake up in the morning, whip out their phone and start scrolling social, and they get consumed by it. They get consumed by the news feed, all the different distractions, versus if you're at the cause of it, you've got systematic ways to tap into some of these channels, specifically LinkedIn, to actually start generating conversations, much like you would at a conference or a networking event, where you can meet people, build relationships. And the key thing is, we're not raising capital on social media necessarily, where someone's wiring you money through Messenger by commenting on your post, say, hey, I just wired you 50 G's. It's more about building the relationship there and then extracting people onto an email list, onto a phone call, and being able to build the relationships and raise the money that way.
Interesting. So do you do this like individually? Do you do it as an individual, or do you do it as like, do you create a business page? Do you do it just through LinkedIn? Like, can you use it on any social media platform?
Yeah, so personal profiles are what tend to do the best. A lot of our strategies require no paid advertising, which is kind of cool, right? So
that's very
personal
cool.
Profiles, posting can be great. Direct messages are usually the quickest path to getting people to raise their hand and want to know more. Like, hey, I'm curious about that. Let's talk. Or, hey, I'll opt into whatever your lead magnet is, whatever, giveaway that you've got, right? So that's where a lot of that happens. And there's inbound, of course, which is through content, things like that. And there's outbound, which is going out there, just like you would imagine you were in a room of 300-400 or however many people who are all high net worth individuals. You wouldn't just go up to them and say, hey, I've got a deal. You ready to write me a check, right? That'd be kind of stupid.
No, so yeah,
but
really.
You would say, hey, my name is so-and-so. They'd ask, what do you do? And they're like, hey, I do this. What do you do? Oh, that sounds interesting. Have you, what
So I
have you
gotta
thought
ask,
about? Yeah.
do you have like a 5-second pitch that you use, like when it comes to this conversation, when you get in the conversation about like what you do and what they do, that opens the conversation.
Sure.
In a sense of, like when I go to my dentist all the time, my dentist and my doctors, they love me. I like sit there and I talk to them like, you could be earning 8-9% interest on your money, your idle money that's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Does that help you with the conversation and your pitch? I'm just curious.
What allows you to grab someone's attention, because you've got to grab someone's attention, right? So there's some favorite ones. Hey, you help people invest in real estate without the headaches of being a landlord, right? Or help people invest in real estate without doing any of the work. Or hey, help people recession proof their investing, all 100% hands off, right? So
wow.
These types of things. And I always joke about this with marketing and messaging, right? There's only so many angles, right? There's only so many ways of saying the same thing. So why would someone invest in real estate? Passive income, tax benefits, all these different things, increasing their net worth. Yeah, exactly. Beating the stock market, protecting their legacy. So there's all that in our program, we call them angles, right? And there's different ways of saying those angles, but at the end of the day, it's like getting someone to buy into what those benefits are through educating them. That's where marketing comes in. And, different people are going to resonate with different hooks, right? Different ways to get their attention.
I really love your unique approach. Honestly, I'm going to be honest, I've invested for well over 10 years. And I've never even thought for a second to utilize my social media in that respect. It's always been more of the old school, just getting to know people and getting to know about them and relationships. So this seems like a very streamlined process as well.
Yeah, it's all about doing it one to many. I'm big on systems. I think people, no matter what kind of business they have, they should have systems, right? Streamlined processes, being able to build that trust. being able to grab people's attention one to many, right? Just like with anything else. So I don't know about you, but like if I'm having the same conversation 20 times a day and repeating myself, it's not as enticing to me.
Yeah, it's not. You lose excitement. I totally
Exactly.
understand that. I love that. So what are some, I guess, like success stories you could share? Do you have any like recent students that have utilized your system and you could share a story about?
Yeah, totally. So one of our recent students, Matt, for example, he's raising money to buy apartment buildings, right? And he started the program 2 months ago. He's already got, I think, 30 to 35 new investors. These are people beyond his current network who are, bought in, and they've got checks that they're ready to write. He's doing less deals than maybe the person who's doing fix and flips, but it could still apply to the person doing fix and flips. And he's already had people wiring him money, and he's met these people on social media, right? And it's not because he's been posting a bunch of stuff necessarily, because he's been having those conversations, booking phone calls, and turning those relationships into capital.
Wow. So does the capital go straight to the individual raising or to the title company or syndicate? How does it work in that respect?
So most people are syndicating deals. Some people are doing more of a fund model, right? So depending on that, kind of what determines that. But really, when people invest, they're investing in you. They're investing in the deal, right? They're investing in themselves and the returns that they're getting, right? So I think that formality, like a lot of people, I think overdo it with the paperwork. Like there's obviously important paperwork, but I think, before the paperwork, so is the person bought in, do they see the vision, what's holding them back, and what's their why behind even investing in the deal?
Yeah, that makes sense. So once they sign up, is there any kind of like they just share the deals or they just share the deals that they're raising private capital for based around their ads?
So my stuff is all about building the investor database, right? So imagine you had 100 people on an email list. It's just like in wholesaling, you have a buyer's list, right? So imagine you have 100 people on an email list. Imagine that all these people are accredited investors, high net worth individuals. Imagine you've had conversations with all of them. You know that, okay, some of them have money sitting in their 401k. Some of them have liquid 50 to 100K to invest, some of them considerably more. And let's say you've got a deal, right? And for that deal, and I just think of larger deals, so that's most of the people we work with, but this doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So let's say you need to raise $2 million. Let's just put that number up there, right? So what do? You email marketing. You're like, okay, hey, we got this deal. Here are the terms. The soft commits, right? You have text messages, you have meetings specifically talking about the deal, but you've got this warm list of, let's say, 100 people in this case, right? And it becomes so much easier to raise that 2 million versus what do most real estate entrepreneurs do? Shoot, I need to raise $2 million. Who in the world? I'm just going to try to put this deal everywhere. I'm talking about the deal with everyone, hopefully be able to raise the money, right? So it's a much more intentional approach. It's actually having systems for being able to add investors and raise money.
I love that. Okay, so what was one of the biggest learning curves when you were building out this system?
Well, one of the biggest learning curves is just understanding, and this is where I think there's marketing agencies out there, there's people talking about marketing, there's a lot of great stuff, but understanding investor psychology is a little bit different than, other products and services, right? Because, what do people want, right? A lot of people talk about great returns. Not enough people talk about reducing risks, right? Reducing risks, getting people to trust you. What are the key points? And then also making sure that we can automate as much as possible, right? The other thing that happens is, let's say you send someone a message on social media, they respond. We found there's different buckets of responses, right? So when someone says this, or when someone asks this question, what do you say back, right? So having those kind of if-when scenarios, like we call them.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. That makes sense. So I know for our viewers, if you're interested in anything that we have discussed so far, you can go to undergroundwealthsecrets.net/capital. And we're going to have a link to everything that we've been discussing so far in the show notes as well for our viewers. So I got to ask, so you're an investor too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're having success using this system, a lot of success with it. It must be, for me looking at it, I'm like, wow, building the relationships and everything, I totally get it. But how nice must it be to know that you can look at deals and pretty much cherry pick your deals that you want to invest in because you built up just this incredible Rolodex of lenders.
Because you have the relationships. Exactly. So the
All
person,
about the relationship.
and there's also ways to come in, like you can raise for other people's deals, right? And get paid a cut of that. So there's a way, if you've got the relationships, you've got the leverage. The money's in the leverage.
Okay. The money is in the leverage for sure. So do you have how many people work in your company? Do you have a large company?
Oh, so we've got, as of now, we've got less than 5 people. So I like to keep things lean. I think some people grow their companies too big, or they have like, too much pride. Like, oh, we have this office, or we've got, a ton of employees. Like, I don't care, like I'm more about being lean. I think automation oftentimes is one of the best employees, because it works for you around the clock, right? So
that is true.
I'm big on that. But no, right now, so we have me, we have our operations manager, customer success manager, we've got my admin assistant, and then we've got, someone who does client relations. So it's very much, and it's not something, and listen, I'm also big on specialists, right? So like, for example, if I wanted to launch a Facebook ad campaign tomorrow, go find someone who knows how to run Facebook ads, right? But I think it's also important for business owners to understand the strategy, like what's the big picture, what's happening, like, what's the messaging, and there's very tactical things that someone can go and implement for you. So that's kind of been where I've shifted a lot of my mindset, where before I had to like try to figure everything out on my own, like, I'm so smart, I can figure this out. Like now I'm like, I want to be with people who are in areas who are better at me. Like I'm a terrible admin person, the worst. Like I'm terrible at doing admin stuff. So we have someone doing admin stuff, and some of the other is system stuff. But I'm very big, like the big picture vision, and just kind of understanding how the pieces come together.
Yeah. It seems like you've got a great system in place. What are some of the best ways that real estate entrepreneurs can stand out, to potential investors online and social media?
Totally. So, we hear a lot about personal branding. I think personal branding is very important. I think it's also kind of overrated. I think people try to create a personal brand when they're not out there building relationships, right? So it's like, okay, you invest in personal branding. How many conversations are you actually having, right? How many eyeballs are you getting, right? Because you can have the prettiest looking website, the best branding in the world. If no one ever comes there, it's like, well, what's the point, right? It's just, you're kind of tooting your own horn. So I think for standing out, messaging is going to be really important. It's very tactical things, right? Online, on Facebook, LinkedIn, some of these other platforms, having great headlines, right? This specifically, don't want to say elevator pitch, but specifically get someone intrigued and learning more about what you do, right? I think another really powerful thing is considering, okay, what are some people's objections, right? Why wouldn't they invest with you? And addressing those in your content, addressing those in your social media profiles, right? Because if they've got a big objection, we call them elephants in the room, why not address that? Because your competition probably isn't, right? Because they're talking about the great returns, right? So, which is what everyone's doing. Other ways to stand out, be consistent. That's a big thing too, like being consistent with your messaging flow, with what you're posting, that type of thing as well. And also, I don't want to say be yourself, because that's a piece of cliche advice. But I will say, if someone can go and look at your messaging and they can literally take it and copy and paste it, if they're doing the same types of deals and it fits for them too, you're doing it wrong, right? So it's got to be something people can't knock off. So being able to tell your story, and every point you're making, tying it back into, hey, what's in it for the other person? What's relevant to them, right? Instead of just, hey, this is my background, because at the end of the day, people care about what's in it for them. So you've got to make yourself relevant.
That is true. This is like a whole new perspective, because I've always been on the other side, like raising private money. So I'm like so excited about this, because this is like, I guess I've just never utilized this. I didn't even know you could do this. I'm just going to be honest. I didn't know you could do this. So what are a few of your recommendations for people starting out with social media to find investors without breaking SEC laws or sounding salesy and just not liable?
Yeah, so we don't want to break SEC laws. I'm not an SEC attorney. I don't play one on TV. Consult with an SEC attorney before you do anything, first and foremost, right? Very first thing is, don't pitch your deals in direct messages. I'll say that again, don't pitch your deals in direct messages. It's not about going out there and cold soliciting potential investors and saying, hey, we don't know each other, but I've got a deal. Do you have 200K? So
I know, right? I'm going to message you when we hang up. Like, I got a deal.
Yeah. So it's like a long-term approach. We've got to build the pipeline, right? So this isn't something where like if you need to close on a deal within 24 hours and you're listening to say, okay, I'm just going to hit up everyone on social media. It's not intentional, right? So we've got to be intentional. We've got to understand, okay, we want to get people indoctrinated first, meaning we want to build the relationships first. Understand who you are, that you're going to be raising money, understand how much capital they're working with or could be working with, right? A lot of people don't know, for example, they could invest through a self-directed IRA. They just don't know, right? So if you're the one who sheds light on that, that's a huge value add. You're giving people a lot of value. So the very first thing is getting clear, okay, who is it that you want to target, right? And I use the word target loosely, but who is it that you want to have conversations and relationships with, right? Because you don't want to talk about money with people who don't have money. That's a kind of an issue, right? So,
Yes.
and then, okay, where are you going to find them? What channels are you going to use? Most of our clients, they're using LinkedIn, they're using Facebook, they're using some other channels. And what are the places you can be where you're the only game in town, right? So this is something that I'm really big on, you know, in terms of my marketing philosophy strategy is the only game in town, right? So I'll give you an example, just like from everyday life, you know, so this past year on Christmas, you know, I wanted to go have lunch somewhere, right? And a lot of things, as people know, are closed on Christmas. However, there was this one diner near me. It was open. It was a nice diner. It was open, but it was the only game in town and it was flooded with people. Like there was an hour wait, right? So being able to do that in your marketing when you talk to investors, how can you differentiate your investment approach, types of deals you're doing, who you are, you know, how can you create something where they feel like they're drawn to you, right? They feel like there's something you have in common. And then also having a strategy on top of things, understanding that posting can be great. It's a whole different conversation, but it's a layer on a bigger picture strategy.
On a bigger picture.
And it's not the only thing, right? So a lot of people get frustrated to try to post content like, oh, shoot, you know, it doesn't work. Well, you know, it's not that it does or doesn't work. First of all, it's missing the big picture strategy and foundation. So those are a few of the things. And then just making sure that you understand it's not about how much time you're spending on social media, right? You could spend a lot of time and not really get anywhere. You could spend very little time, and through using systems and automation, make tremendous progress.
Yeah, that makes sense too. So I got to ask, I know like we spoke earlier before we recorded, and you mentioned something about the attraction webinar and an investor attraction webinar. What's your definition of an investor attraction webinar, and what would make that such a powerful tool for people to use in their investing business to raise more capital?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people listening, of course, know what a webinar is, right? It's an online presentation. So the really cool thing about an investor attraction webinar, it's not deal specific. It's not to pitch a specific deal where you need to raise. That's a different type of webinar. This is an introductory webinar, right? So taking 15 to 25 minutes to educate people, okay, about passive investing, about, you know, for example, one thing a lot of people don't know is they can go and, you know, put some of their 401k in alternative assets if they do a self-directed IRA. So mentioning that, sharing a little bit of your story, establishing that rapport, doing that one to many, right? Being able to do those things. And the great thing about these webinars is you can automate them. They can be pre-recorded, right? And you have this presentation. Now imagine you're on a call with someone who's a potential investor before the call, and we do this with all our stuff, before the call, they've watched an intro video, they've watched your investor attraction webinar. Now they know a little bit about you, right? Now those FAQs, those questions that they're going to ask you, you've answered them in advance, right? So it takes a lot of the pressure off the selling process.
So you can get rid of all the rebuttals in your
You can educate
video.
past those in the investor attraction webinars. It's a really powerful tool. People can deliver it live as well. So if you're asked to speak somewhere, guess what? You take that same kind of structure. There's a whole psychological framework to it. And now you're not just overeducating people and pouring a ton of information. You're actually giving them very specific things that are going to inspire action. And that's the biggest indicator. Does it inspire action?
Yeah, I like that. Gosh, this is exciting. I'm used to the old school ways, like the gun club and the rain, like participating in places that, you know, most people have a high net worth if they're affiliated with certain things.
Right.
And that's always been my key in, I guess, in my little local Texas town. But this is just streamlined process that I've seen like no other. So what would you say to our viewers listening today? Like somebody just starting out or even seasoned that's an investor in buying properties, like what is some advice or feedback you would give our viewers?
I would say start with the end in mind, reverse engineer what you can. It's not necessarily about doing more. It's about maximizing what you're doing. Even with relationships, you might have relationships with people that you haven't talked to in years, but they could maybe invest with you, right? Or you might have, podcasts like this one, right? That you've got a relationship with someone that you could come on and be a guest, right? So getting those little wins. I think the biggest thing too is to understand when it comes to capital raising, we're in a great time to do it, right? No matter where the economy goes, the stock market got hit pretty bad in 2022, right? So it's a great time to be educating people, be building those relationships. And I think there's gonna be some great deals coming your way in the next 12 to 24 months, maybe some of the best deals that you're gonna see in a while. So it's never too early to get started. And the saying, just have a great deal and the money will come, I think that's complete BS. Anyone who's got some experience knows that's just not the case. It's a matter of build the relationships first, get the deals, and raise the money.
Thank you so much, Yakov, for today. But wait, before we close out, I got to ask this. So, is there any one person or role model that was most influential in your life that really guided you to being an entrepreneur in general? I mean, did you know you always wanted to be an entrepreneur? Or did you realize as you were growing up, maybe this is really the best road for me, and you're successfully running a business? So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I always knew. I don't know if it was one specific person. I just always knew. I just kind of had a feeling in my gut as a child. It wasn't any one specific person that was just like, oh, I want to be like them, so I want to be an entrepreneur. I always thought being an entrepreneur also there was an opportunity to make more money. So I understood that. That made a lot of sense to me. But yeah, that was always kind of in the back of my mind. And I didn't really have any in my family who I knew who was an entrepreneur. So it's not like that's where that came from. And then I got into, when I was a teenager, I got into reading more books, understanding psychology and all these different things. And then definitely was inspired by a lot of the people out there. But, early on, I think for me, I had this, I remember I was in, it's kind of an odd story, but I don't know where this came from, but it was I was maybe 6, 7 years old, right? And I walked by, there was this girl, there were these two girls, and this one girl I knew, she rode my bus, and I was like, it looks like they're having a conflict. And I was like, I wonder if I could charge her money and show her how to resolve that conflict. It was just this really dumb idea that I never did anything, but I don't know where that came from. I just was like, I see a problem. I could make some money that way. And that was something that was there from somewhere.
Wow. Incredible. All right. One last thing. If you could recommend one book at all, what book would you recommend for any entrepreneur, seasoned or new, just getting started, or seasoned in real estate, or, just in business in general? If you could recommend one book, is there any one book that you would always recommend or highly recommend for our viewers?
Can't recommend just one. That's a tough question.
I know it's hard.
Can I recommend 3?
Yes, you could recommend 3.
Or 30.
We'll keep what we can in the show notes, everybody, just so you're aware. And again, just to keep everybody on track, for everything that we've been discussing today, you can go to undergroundwealthsecrets.net/capital, and we'll have a link in the show notes as well. But yeah, you could do 3.
Let's do 3. All right. So, and these aren't in any particular order. These are just 3 that I think are valuable. So, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's actually a newer book. It came out in January 2023. Very, very good especially for seasoned entrepreneurs, but new entrepreneurs, I think it's a great foundation too. Lots of gems in there. There's a book out there. It's called Sleep Smarter. It's by a guy named Sean Stevenson. It's all about how to sleep better. I think sleeping well is just such a big part of life, especially for entrepreneurs. Why not have that superpower? And then the third book, I like this book. It's called Magician versus Mule. It's by a guy named Mark Evans DM. And it's all about leverage and systems. So those are 3 that I think no matter where someone's at in their journey, and even if you've read them before, there's value in rereading them or reminding yourself and, implementing different parts of them, because it's always a journey. It's kind of this ongoing evolution that we have. I
know. It's like a whole new year, and I feel like I'm in a whole new place personally and professionally already. I feel like I'm focusing on different things now. as the year has come about and changes have come. So I appreciate you sharing those 3 books. So again, for our viewers, for all the information that we discussed today on the show, you can go to undergroundwealthsecrets.net/capital, and it will have everything that Yakov and myself had discussed today. In closing, do you have any final words before we close that you'd like to say to our audience?
No, appreciate everyone being here. Definitely reach out. Always all about building relationships. I know we have some links on the show page, so take a look at those. And always appreciate when people are tuning into podcasts, improving themselves, wanting to grow. And there's never a limit on how far you can go.
I agree. There's never a limit how far you can go. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure meeting with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Underground Wealth Secrets. May these nuggets of wisdom lead you to finally discovering your true potential. Become one of the most reliable businesses out there that's dedicated both to filling up your bank accounts and leaving a positive impact on your community. Get more informative and engaging conversations like this one at undergroundwealthsecrets.net. Don't forget to leave a positive rating and share with your friends. That's all for now. Until next time.